Ladies and gentlemen, my name is TotalBiscuit. I'm here to ask and answer one simple question. WTF is this anime nonsense? Well, it's actually not by the Japanese at all. It's by the name of Long Live the Queen, coming from Hanako Games and Spiky Caterpillar. Hanako Games consists of one woman and some freelance artists, and it's a bit of a life sim. And you play the princess of a kingdom, and it seems like everyone is out to horribly murder you in every possible way. So you die over and over and over and over again. It's the Dark Souls of life sims in silly anime costumes. Now, I've got to say, I was pretty put off by the title scene here, because the first thing I thought is, oh dear, it's one of those pervy Japanese games with the nonsense fan service. Funnily enough, it's actually not, although the art style, for those of you who dislike chibi anime nonsense, I think it's even chibi, I assume that's some kind of description of stuff. It's overly cutesy with gigantic sodding eyes for no reason, with those eyebrows that inexplicably are on top of the hair. That kind of art style. Not the kind of art style I'm personally into. In fact, I positively despise it for the most part. But we'll try and get past that and get into the game. So the options menu is lacking in quite a few things. The video settings are a little strange. As you can see, it's actually rendering at 1224x600, which is a fairly low resolution. Now, you can change the physical resolution, but the logical resolution, that being the resolution that the art was done and the game was done at, remains the same, meaning it doesn't really make a blind bit of difference. You can go full screen, but it just means it's going to blow it up, so I'm actually playing it in a window here. A little bit disappointing, because some of the art in this game, outside of some of the kind of Japanese character art, the background art in particular was actually quite good, but the problem is it's displayed at a fairly low resolution, so it's a little bit difficult to drink it all in. Aside from that, preferences involve these different effects here, as you can see. Might want to actually increase text speed and just see if we can remove some of the auto delay, because it is a life sim. That means that there's quite a lot of writing, a lot of text in there. We can skip through quite a lot of it, and that's the rest of it right there. So it does what it needs to do, I think, but immediately the concern that I would have is that the art is not high resolution enough, and it would be nice to be able to run it natively in 1080p instead of a resolution that is actually sub 720. Okay, let's go into the game and explain exactly what's going on, shall we? We do actually also have a checklist, but I don't want to show that to you because I think it will be spoilerific, so I'm going to avoid that. Alright, so welcome. This guy's your dad. I know, he looks 16, which makes things very unlikely. But, as anime stuff, I guess. So as you can see, I've got it running on fairly high speed, so if you can read it, by all means do. If you can't, then I don't really necessarily blame you, but that's fine. So you are the crown princess, and it is your task to not die and be good at possibly everything. And you make some decisions along the way, quite a few in fact. So this is you. Yes, she's looking rather depressed, but honestly, I think if we removed the hair, she would just look like a mutant. The size of the eyes is insane, but never mind. I never really will truly understand this anime art style. Okay, so what can you do? Well, every day you learn skills, and you do so in classes. Now, the skills you can learn are dependent on your mood, as you would expect. So, right now, if we look at her mood, you'll notice there's 4 different bars, and these can go from angry to afraid, cheerful to depressed, so on and so forth. There is no right mood, yeah? So if she gets super depressed, she's not going to go and off herself. That's not going to happen. But depending on which is your dominant mood, which right now is depressed, that is going to dictate what skills you will be able to train at a high level. So, because she's depressed, learning conversation, not gonna be a thing right now. She's not in the mood for that, but she is a little bit better at expressing herself, so there's decoration, instrument, and voice, and also animal handling for whatever reason. Each of these skills is governed by your dominant mood, and there are penalties based on the other ones. So royal demeanor is pretty low right now. I'd get a -1 if I attempted to train that, which wouldn't be too great. And why is that? Well, there's a mood penalty for depression, and also possibly for other moods. The dominant mood right now is depressed, so that's the one that really counts there. So you don't want to train that, but something like, say, animal handling or expression might be a little bit more useful. As to what these are used for, well, that's what you determine throughout the game, because this is a life sim, but in many ways, a life sim really just means a more advanced choose-your-own adventure. For those of you who read those when you were a lot younger, you probably know what I'm talking about here, and those were often unfair, and this game is also very unfair, and it's going to be based very much so around the idea of trial and error. So I'm going to start by spending my day learning decoration, so it's quite useful, dressing well, that kind of thing, so a typical skill that you might need. Now, I get a bonus to this, as you can see here, so I boosted it up to 15, and then boosted up again to 30. Now, the skills will cap out at 50 until you get 25 in all of the others, so you can't max out a skill very quickly. You've got to work on a particular group of skills in order to get them up to high levels. And the game is rife with skill checks for all sorts of different skills. Now, knowing which skills you're going to need, that's something you are not going to really know. You can get some hints in places, but most of the time you're going to learn it because you played the game previously. Now, after each day of training, you can go and do one of these. This is a way to deliberately manipulate your mood in some way. So, currently my dominant mood is depressed. Not that helpful. I may be able to get my dominant mood down to afraid instead. So if I went to there, that would make me more afraid, but that would also make me more depressed. So depressed will remain my dominant mood there. Or I could go and attend a service, which is -1 depressed, which would take it up to there. I'd think that would still be my dominant mood, though. So it's worth having a look. Lonely and afraid. Explore. Well, that sounds bad, doesn't it? But actually, it's not. So there we go. So +1 lonely, +1 afraid. I think that just outright... Yeah, that's made her afraid now. So that has changed the bonuses that are available in my training. As it turns out, I can actually do conversation now if I want, and in fact, I may be able to manipulate it even further. If I can get up my cheerfulness a bit, I will gain even more bonuses to conversation. Or maybe if I can make lonely my dominant one. For some inexplicable reason, that makes you better at public speaking, but who knew? Alright, in this case, we are going to throw some skill points into faith, I think. We're going to do that. We're going to get some divination. And I think we might actually do a little bit of conversation as well. Let's go for court manners. There we go. Again, a useful skill to have in this situation. So, in this game, you're more of a diplomat as well as being a ruler, which is a little bit interesting. So, you're trying to navigate a bunch of social situations, and a lot of situations which are actually steeped in intrigue. There's a little bit of Game of Thrones tossed in here, with various people out to kill you, and a lot of the things which will kill you in this game can be avoided if you treat the people that may wish to murder you later in a better way. Alright, I'm going to arrest her for the time being. So you get these decisions once in a while, and that can affect your mood and things like that. In this case, I'm very specifically arresting her because there's a particular result that I'm looking for in the day after, and those events don't change. Yeah? Your responses to the events can change the outcome, but the events are always going to happen on the same day at the same time, assuming that you didn't cause one of the events to happen through a previous action. So eventually you'll figure everything out, which reminds me again of those choose-your-own-adventure books. Alright, what was I going for? I still want to knock that depressed on the head, if at all possible. So, we're actually less afraid now. I'm going to explore the castle a little bit more. There we go. So that puts it back onto afraid. And we can see exactly which skills that affects through this menu. Now, this screen right here, and just the screen design in general, is one of the problems I've got with the game. Because I think that she could have very much put this information on the same page as this stuff. Now, I know, you're thinking, how could you possibly do that? Well, it's easy enough. There are actually tooltips here. So if I hover over any of these, it tells you exactly what they do. But you could show the bonuses here, so that you didn't have to go here. This entire screen could be left simply for tracking the level of your skills. You don't even need it, actually. You could toss this entire screen away and integrate it into this screen, yeah? These could actually be progress bars, so maybe I would be up to here in court manners. If I hovered over it, it would tell me the bonus, and maybe it would even tell me which mood that bonus comes from. Now, it depends on how much information you really want to give to the player, because this is a game about figuring things out. So, if you give all of that mood information immediately to the player, you may find that the player tries to min-max right out of the gate. That's something to consider. But if you make a game like this, that's to be expected, because this game can be very much beaten with a wiki. Now, it can be beaten in various different ways, so that's something to consider. But it's something like, say, Game Dev Tycoon, where there are optimal ways of doing certain things, and you can learn what those are based on certain wiki articles and formula or just a general walkthrough, especially with this game, considering the same events happen every single time. Now, this looks bad, right? Yeah, it kind of does, except it's not. This is actually a fairly optimal way of doing things. Now, you know what I did earlier? I sent I think it was the Baroness or the Duchess away into the dungeon. The reason I did that is because if I didn't send her there, she would actually come and try and save me from this snake. Yeah? Now, in doing so, I would act terrified, and then the snake would actually bite my friend instead. Which is a little weird. Now, I got bit, but we then discover something about this person as a direct result of that. So, there's what is basically a gigantic decision tree going on here, which is what you would expect from a visual novel and also what you would expect from a life sim. And I'd say this is more of a life sim than it is a visual novel, but there's definitely elements of both genres in here. And, of course, elements of choose your own adventure. Very much so, in fact. Very much so. And some people are going to have the patience for that, and some people really aren't. Yeah? I think I have the patience for it because I played those game books when I was a lot younger. So to me, it made a certain degree of sense. Alright, what are the best things I can do here? Probably still into mystical. I'm not really doing hugely well in anything right now, but I can keep working on mystical, and what that will actually allow me to do is it will let me get an outfit, and that outfit can be used in order to boost my abilities in a particular area. I'm going to keep working on court manners as well, because that's quite useful regardless. There we go. Alright, so what do I want to do? Well, I can talk to someone to advance the plot line, or alternatively, I can go and do something else. What mood am I looking for here? Well, I'm maximized in Afraid right now, which does give me certain bonuses in various places. Not really sure what else I want to do. My Afraid's maxed, so do I want to be more depressed? Probably not. Do I want to be lonelier? It's hard to say. Funnily enough, you can be afraid, but also cheerful. So, we could do that. There we go. Increase the loneliness, increase the cheerful. And you can look at exactly what happened. Now, as I was saying earlier, I think I keep saying she could have very much put this information into the game. Because right now I'm kind of guessing, but I also have on my other monitor a wiki page open, which is telling me, oh, right, the mood bonus for conversation is lonely and cheerful, the mood penalty is depressed and pressured. That's not something that the game tells you, it's something that it expects you to learn over time, right? And you get to this difficult point, I suppose, of saying, well, which is the right thing to do? What should you actually do in that situation? Should you give that information to the player, or should you deliberately hide it and make the player learn it? More to the point... I'm not going to wear that. There we go. More to the point, does it actually help in any way to hide that information? Does it make it a better game, or does it make it a worse game? And will it just stop people from going to the wiki? I mean, what is to stop people going to the wiki in order to find that kind of information out? Well, really, there isn't all that much to stop people going to the wiki, and in fact, I would almost recommend it, because you get so much information from there, and you're able to save some time, and I messed that up. But I got an outfit, there we go, which will help me buff some things up. It's hard to say whether or not it would be a good idea to show that information, but I have a feeling that maybe just giving more hints. You don't have to show them completely, but because I had no idea going into this game what moods did what, and I didn't really want to spend the time figuring it out, I resorted to the wiki, and I think that if that ever happens, then your game has perhaps failed in some way to convey the information properly to the player. It doesn't mean that you have to go out and tell the player absolutely everything. Absolutely not. You don't have to do that. But, it would be pretty cool if you gave a little bit more information. And that also extends on to some of the deaths in the game and some of the bad events that can happen. You can avoid some of it. Oh dear. I will accept her apology. There we go. And I was able to do that because I actually had court manners. But if I had better reflexes, I could have avoided that altogether. So, as you can see, there's a number of ways of getting around things. But up to that point, I wouldn't have known that that event was going to happen. And that wasn't too severe, but it's things that you learn along the way through trial and error, because the game doesn't actually give you enough feedback. If you have something high, like a skill like divination, or you have a lot of skill in intrigue, you will learn more about the world, and that will help you make better decisions. But there's still some stuff that's left to chance. And there's one particular death that I have actually had happen to me twice now, which is ridiculous, considering I knew it was going to happen. I failed it anyway, which completely ends the game, by the way. That can be avoided with 3 different skills, but you don't see it coming at all. Yeah? There's this general feel that something will go wrong, but you never know exactly what. And one of the skills that you need to avoid it is actually kind of absurd, and you wouldn't think that you'd really need it. So, it is, you know, it can be a bit of a time waster. But I think that's something that's inherent to the genre. It's not something you can necessarily avoid. But if you're looking for something that will be instantly rewarding, then it's something that probably won't work out for you. It's not the kind of genre that you should be looking at. Now, what about the rest of the game? In terms of the writing, because there's a hell of a lot of that. I found it pretty good for the most part. Some of it's quite funny. I don't think it's bang on, but then again, what exactly you're aiming for here? Because there's some pretty dark stuff in this game, and then there's some quite funny stuff and some whimsical things that happen, so I think the writing does its job. There was nothing that stood out to me as a really, really good piece of writing, which I would hope to find in a game that has visual novel elements in it, but there was also nothing that stood out to me as being completely cringeworthy, and also, nicely enough, there was nothing that stood out as being ridiculously anime, which is probably for the best, because that's not the kind of writing that I usually enjoy, but that's very much a personal preference. Interface issues aside, and things that are very much inherent to the genre, this trial and error nature of it, I think that this game does what it's supposed to do and actually delivers some rather unique subject matter. There are plenty of life sims around, there are some where you rule a kingdom, but not necessarily from this kind of perspective. And in this case, you're learning a lot of the sort of princess-like social skills alongside things that are important to other elements of the kingdom, like economics and military strategy. And if you don't know this stuff, you're going to fail various other events. As you saw earlier, I failed an event to basically fund the printing press because I didn't understand enough about trade and production, so my princess automatically rejected it. Later on, there's again kind of a bit of a spoiler, but you were going to run into this in a minute anyway, there is someone coming asking you about setting up a military hospital. If you don't know enough about medicine, and you don't know enough about herbalism and battlefield medicine and things like that, then you're not going to be able to set that up because you'll think it's a bad idea. And for what I can tell, it seems nigh on impossible to nail absolutely everything. Very, very unlikely that you'd be able to pull that off. But that's not the point. You're not supposed to get everything. You're supposed to figure out which way you want to make your way through the game, and it seems like there are multiple ways to win, as well as there are multiple ways to horribly lose. Alright, I'm going to go for agility, and I'm going to up those reflexes a little bit. There we go. Got some good bonuses, get it up to 30. I can now play sports on the weekends, which is useful, because I do actually need to be a little bit angrier, and that's going to be a way to do it. There we go. Now, here's another thing. I don't know much about foreign affairs, and I don't know much about the military, so there must be a peaceful way to sort this out. Okay. Well, I could do that, but once the diplomats arrive, what am I going to be able to do? Good question. Alright, let's play a few sports. A little bit of anger. There we go. That's going to change again, the skills that I can get. I keep clicking on classes because these separate screens don't really make a huge amount of sense. I hope that this is something the developer can maybe take into account in future, is that the elegance of the UI is in its simplicity. The more of these screens you add on, the more of a pain in the arse it is to actually play the game, because you don't have the information immediately to hand. In a game like this, where these decisions very much matter, you need that information to hand. And since I don't have it, it just involves flicking between screens over and over again, which is unnecessary clutter, in my opinion. Which one to go for? I know there's something going on with foreign affairs, but... yeah, I can get away with that. I can do some history stuff. And I can go... I'm going to just dump some points into foreign affairs here and hope that that's enough to actually help me out with the forthcoming negotiations. Although it might not be. I only have 20 in foreign affairs. Norman history fails. Foreign affairs success, however. There we go. So, I can actually offer to punish the Duchess of Hellas. So, that might be a way to go. Or I can offer him money. There we go. I'm gonna do that. What should I do? Command her to marry an Ixionite. I could do that, but as I know, if I do that and I don't know enough about internal affairs, then I won't know enough about who to send her to marry. It's pretty... there we go. I'm going to strip her of her titles. And people are protesting. This is outrageous. I've screwed that up completely, and someone's probably going to horribly murder me later, because that's the way that the game actually works out. But it's pretty unique. As I said, it deals with the subject matter quite well in a fairly humorous way, but also makes clear the severity of the actions. You know, making these choices does make a huge difference to the game. Offers it a good amount of replayability, but a lot of that replayability comes from the fact that the game is very much trial and error. Once you get the game's logic inside your head, I think you will make less mistakes. And considering that the same events happen time and again, you can know how best to prepare for them. And a lot of the replayability comes from that, but some of you might find that very much artificial, because you're just being asked to repeat the same thing with the same dialogue over and over again, which is not going to be too fantastic for a lot of people. There's a reason why these life sims and choose-your-own adventures are very much a niche genre, but I think this one does a pretty good job of it. It's got its faults. I'd certainly like to see more from this developer, because I think there's a lot of potential here. I think UI design and communicating information to the player should perhaps be the priority in future developments, because subject matter, she's pretty much got it bang on, and she's managed to make something that is reasonably compelling, and has a fairly unique slant to it, which is good. And the way that that slant is dealt with is also good. But the game is still a bit of a pain in the arse in places, and it's going to frustrate a lot of people, especially since there are instant death scenarios that you can't necessarily see coming. And I'd be fine if it was a mistake that I personally made, rather than one I just blundered into without any knowledge that I couldn't have possibly known about unless I happened to check the wiki. And there's the problem with it. There you go, folks. Long Live the Queen, which is available on Steam for $10 or your regional equivalent. My name has been TotalBiscuit. Thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you next time.